again folks, I've got a new build and a bit of science for you today. I'm going to take you through how I put together our new 12 volt solar system with a very brief outline of how solar panels turn this into this. I had been using an alarm backup battery installed in an ammo box, but it really wasn't up to the task at all, so a new system had to be put together, and that's what this project is all about. So these are the various components for the system, which I'll go through one by one in a bit, but for now just try to imagine all of this installed in that. If you've seen the trailer conversion video I did, you'll have seen the main component already, a pair of trailer mounted ex-marine solar panels. By today's standards they're pretty dated, but they're still functional and pumping out volts. They supply 12 volts each, and because I've connected them in series, this gives me a potential 24 volt supply while keeping the amps at the rating of each individual panel. A series system combines the voltage of however many panels you have, so my two together are 24, 3 would be 36, etc. A system connected in parallel would keep the voltage at 12 but combine the amps. What I'm after ideally is 13.8 volts, which is the ideal float voltage to charge a 12 volt battery, so having two 12s linked in series is a good way to ensure a decent voltage even on cloudy days hopefully. The best angle for a solar panel's optimum exposure to the sun's rays is 45 degrees, so they're hinged onto the trailer frame and have a simple pair of wing nutted legs to keep them up in position. When I installed these, I also added a couple of wire safety cables to stop them falling forward and snapping off their hinges if the wind catches them, or if I need to lift up the trailer lid for any reason. Because I already have the panels installed, I'm not going to consider those part of the project, just the finished system, but let's have a blast through all the other components I had to pull together for the build. Number one on the build list, the heart of the project, a good quality leisure battery. This is a Hankook Plus 110 amp hour deep cycle series battery with a 4-year warranty. It's the most expensive part of the build at 81 quid, but that's still pretty reasonable for a 110 amp hour leisure battery, and now at least we have the peace of mind that the core of our system is up to the job. It's quite a lump at 23 kilos, but as it's specifically for the trailer setup, that is not a problem. Next up, a box sturdy and practical enough to support both the weight of the battery and fit all the components that we need. This is a Husky Light box, no idea what it's designed for originally, but the fact that it's made out of tough polypropylene and has nice flat sides and an interlocking lid makes it ideal for my purposes. These two work perfectly together apart from one thing: the box tapers at the bottom to just below the length of the battery. To counteract this, I'm using yoga blocks to lift the battery slightly. This raises it just enough to fit the box exactly and still be able to close the lid fully with about a millimetre to spare. Jammy or what? There's even enough space left for the component wiring inside. To keep the other components safe, I'm also going to install a couple of security brackets to prevent any potential movement of the battery in transit. To link the battery to the system, I've got a pair of quick release terminal connectors and a fused battery cable. It's always a good idea to put an inline fuse on the positive from the battery, for safety mainly, but also to save any components from potential damage. I'm also wiring in a power kill switch on the positive line so the system can be isolated from the battery when the panels are plugged in to recharge it during the day. At night, although it's only a minimal loss, this little gem will also prevent drainage of the battery through the lights on the panels. A vital component in a setup like this is a charge regulator. While the system's capable of supplying 24 volts, I'm only charging a 12 volt leisure battery, so this is the gizmo that regulates the float voltage at 13.8 volts, preventing overcharge and component damage. This model is rated at 12 to 24 volts and 20 amps. The control panel I'm fitting is a 12 volt multi-fused panel with 5 rocker switches, a voltmeter, a 12 volt socket and a twin USB socket. Every positive feed has its own inline fuse, so combined with the one on the battery cable, it should make a pretty well protected system. It's very probably overkill, but I'm also installing an extra 12 volt supply block with 2 extra 12 volt sockets and another twin USB socket. Why? Because why not, eh? Better to have and not need than need and not have. There are two types of lights in the system. The first are built-in, one on each side of the box, and the second are plug-in bulbs that can be hung or hooked wherever you want for extra flexibility. Our family tent has a loop on each side of the main door inside, so they're designed specifically for that, but they could be used anywhere. I've got some MC4 solar connectors for the panel to panel and panel to system connections, a handful of spade and ring connectors to complete all the necessary circuits, and I thought I'd go the whole hog on this project and seal up the connections with a bit of heat shrink. Just to give it that seems like he knows what he's doing look. There's a bit of pre-assembly prep on a few of the parts. I had to drill out the mounting holes on the control panel so these brass bolts I want to use would fit. I don't need this end of the fuse cable. The wiring that came with the bulb lights can go. And these need to come off the terminal connectors. Mainly so they don't stop the lid of the box closing, but also as they're just not needed. That's the prep done. Time for the build. The first thing I'm doing is cutting the pads to size so I know how to drill the holes for the electrics. Next up, security brackets. Time for a bit of precision now. I need to cut some holes on the front of the box for the panels and the kill switch, a couple on the sides for the built-in lights here and here, a couple under the charge regulator to run some cables from it, and one at the back of the box for the solar panel charging cable to exit from. And that's all the holes trimmed up. That will definitely do. As often happens with projects, a little change of plan. I'm going to use a couple of the holes that are already in the box to run the solar panel charge cables out the back. To seat the lights, I just need to unscrew the fascia plate from the LEDs and assemble them again from either side. It's important to make sure that these retaining clips are overlapping the edges of the hole. Simple as that. The panels are just bolted into place using the pre-drilled holes. And their components are reassembled after that. Kill switch is held in place with a locking ring. All I have to do is make sure that the power symbol is the right way up, like so. To complete the wiring, the switch panel needs a negative block making up, and the panel didn't come with any instructions on how to do that. After a bit of YouTube searching, I found a video called How to Wire a Van Switch Panel RV by Mark Davies, and all credit due, it was the clearest and easiest to follow by a long shot. So shout out to Mark, your how-to was really helpful, mate. Cheers. If you're interested in giving a 12-volt system a go and you need to install a multi-switch panel into it, there's a link to Mark's video in the description. We're getting close to powering her up now, so I'm going to need some terminal connectors and positive and negative lines putting on. So that's the lines on. This double one is to the charge regulator, and these single ones, the negative and the fuse positive, are to the control panels. Now the battery's in, first things I'm going to connect are the battery line and the solar panel charging line to the charge regulator. The battery line here goes through the box and ends up on these two terminals via this line. The charging cable goes through the box the same way, but runs down the side there, out of the exit hole, and ends up on two MC4 connectors, so you can connect and disconnect to the panels easily. Sadly though, try as I might, I just couldn't get all the wiring put together with the battery still in situ, so there was no way I was fighting my way around that, so that had to come out again. The negative block was a bit fiddly to film, so I took the lazy way out and just built it, but here's what you need to do to put one together. Here's your positive and your negative lines on the main panel. What you do is you take your negative line and you put it in the first connector on your block, and then follow it through with another piece of cable to the negative on the battery. Leaving as many spare connectors as you have rocker switches, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. You then wire in negative loops all the way along to the other end of the block. All the negatives from your gadgets go into the other side of the block in whatever order you want them to correlate with the switches. Next, wire the positive feeds from your gadgets onto the fuse positive lines of the rocker switches on the panel. These two inbuilt sockets are powered directly from the panel, but this extra triple socket isn't. So from left to right on the 5 switches, we've got left side light, 12-volt socket, 12-volt socket, USB double socket, and right side light. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And finally, take the positive wire on the panel through the kill switch, and through the inline fuse to the positive on the battery. And that's that. If I've done my job right, I should have a fully functional, all singing and all dancing 12-volt power system. Just one last thing to do, test the panels and the sockets for power, but before we do that, I promised you some science.
Hello, are you tired of your day-to-day bills going up and up with no signs of coming down and down? Then what you need is our new Animal Tendencies patented Sunbeam glass power machine thing. It takes happy sunbeams and turns them into buzz electrics with no hassle and no rich business swine running away with bags of your hard-earned cashings. How is this possible, we hear you cry? Well, imagine for a moment you are a happy sunbeam, or a photon if you will. Whizzing through thin air, minding your own business, you just so happen to encounter the glass of the Animal Tendencies patented Sunbeam glass power machine thing. A special glass, a glass beneath which hides not one, but 2 layers of ultra-purified crystallized sand. Yes, sand! Silicone, in fact. The N-type silicone layer is doped with phosphorus for extra electrons, and the P-type silicone layer is doped with boron to create holes for electrons. Where these 2 layers meet is known as the PN junction, and an electrical field is produced, making electrons want to travel from the P side to the N side. A happy sunbeam such as yourself doesn't concern yourself with such sciencey shenanigans, however, and simply plows into the glass at the speed of light with your happy sunbeam friends, hitting electrons and knocking them loose from the N-type layer, which creates holes that the electrons from the P-type layer rush to fill. This creates a direction of flow, or current, which is collected by tiny filaments and can be used immediately or stored for later use in the equally incredible Animal Tendencies patented Buzz Electric storage box. Marvellous! And there you have it, turning 382 septillion, 800 sextillion watts of fiery nuclear fusion into 12 volts of rather more friendly electricity has never been easier. So for less up and uppings, more down and downings, and far fewer business swine getting away with your hard-earned cashings, get your Animal Tendencies patented sunbeam glass power machine thing with optional Buzz Electric storage box and start colliding your own photons and electrons today!
There you have it. Energy from thin air. The first thing to check is that all those watts from up there are getting where they need to go down here. And there you are. A nice steady float voltage of almost 13.8 volts. To test the outputs, I've got my phone for the USBs and the bulbs that I mentioned at the beginning of the video for the 12 volt sockets. The bulbs originally came with crocodile clips, which were no good for the system, so another little mod was in order. After I cut off the original short wires, the plug-in lights needed a spot of soldering to put them on a single run of wire long enough for our tent. And I incorporated connectors near the bulbs so they can easily be swapped out if they fail. As with the other spade connections in the system, the finishing touch after crimping is a bit of heat shrink. I don't have a heat gun, I used a lighter instead, so the trick's not to overdo it and ruin the heat shrink. Just a quick pass on either side like that, and you can see it contracting pretty quickly, and job's a good one. USB sockets first then. One, two, three, and four. Oh, and not forgetting the two on the charge regulator. One and two, all good. Now for the 12 volt sockets. One, two, and three. Perfect, that's all the outputs powered up and working fine. I'm well pleased with that, spot on. No shortage of power for us while we're camping. While I've been building this, I've actually had another idea for an add-on which will be following up in a new video very soon, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, thanks for watching, take it easy and get out there.